Hello, good evening, and a very warm welcome to the Spider's Web with me, your host, Bee. I hope you've all been behaving yourselves since last week, but don't worry, I shall find out if you haven't. It's a skill. So, on to this week's video, which was an idea put forward to me by my best mate, who said, "Have you thought about doing myths and legends?" So I've tweaked it a bit. It's in two halves. So I bring you myths and urban legends. Enjoy! Falkirk in Scotland is home to the Kelpies, the largest equine sculpture in the world. Unveiled in April 2014, these 30-metre high horsehead sculptures are situated in Helix Park, near the M9 motorway, and are a monument to Scotland's horse-powered industrial heritage. But what are Kelpies? A Kelpie is a shape-changing aquatic spirit of Scottish legend. Its name may derive from the Scottish Gaelic words Cailpeach or Colpatch, meaning heifer or colt. Kelpies are said to haunt rivers and streams, usually in the shape of a horse. But beware, these are malevolent spirits. The Kelpie may appear as a tame pony beside a river. It is particularly attractive to children, but they should take care, for once on its back, its sticky magical hide will not allow them to dismount. Once trapped in this way, the Kelpie will drag the child into the river and then eat him. These water horses can also appear in human form. They may materialise as a beautiful young woman, hoping to lure young men to their death. Or they might take on the form of a hairy human lurking by the river, ready to jump out at unsuspecting travellers and crush them to death in a vice-like grip. Kelpies can also use their magical powers to summon up a flood in order to sweep a traveller away to a watery grave. The sound of a Kelpie's tail entering the water is said to resemble that of thunder, and if you're passing by a river and hear an unearthly wailing or howling, take care. It could be a Kelpie warning of an approaching storm. But there is some good news. A Kelpie has a weak spot: its bridle. Anyone who can get hold of a Kelpie's bridle will have command over it and any other Kelpie. A captive Kelpie is said to have the strength of at least 10 horses and the stamina of many more, and is highly prized. Lady Godiva was a late Anglo-Saxon noblewoman who is relatively well documented as the wife of Leofric, Earl of Mercia, and a patron of various churches and monasteries. According to the typical version of the story, Lady Godiva took pity on the people of Coventry, who were suffering grievously under her husband's oppressive taxation. Lady Godiva appealed again and again to her husband, who obstinately refused to lower the taxes. At last, weary of her entreaties, he said he would grant her request if she would strip naked and ride a horse through the streets of the town. Lady Godiva took him at his word, and after issuing a proclamation that all persons should stay indoors and shut their windows, she rode through the town, clothed only in her long hair. Just one person in the town, a tailor ever afterwards known as Peeping Tom, disobeyed her proclamation in what is the most famous instance of voyeurism. There is said to be a letter from pre-1700 stating that the Peeper was actually Action, Lady Godiva's groom. Additional myth proclaims that Peeping Tom was later struck blind as heavenly punishment, or that the townspeople took the matter into their own hands and blinded him. Appearing in the middle of Llynfanfach Lake in Wales, a beautiful woman plays with the hearts of many men, luring them in with her beauty and affection. She took a husband, a sheep farmer who fell in love. The condition was he was not to harm her or lay a finger on her, or she would return to the lake. After a few years and a few children, he hit her 3 times, so she went back to the lake, never to return to him. The lake is found in the northern parts of the Black Mountain in Carmarthenshire, South Wales. You can visit the lake, but beware of the persuasive nature and alluring beauty of this folklore figure. Tarnifa are man-eating monsters, usually dwelling in deep water, both salt and fresh. They somewhat resemble dragons, although they have the ability to shapeshift into natural creatures, such as whales, or objects, such as bits of wood. They sometimes act as guardians, but have also been known to kidnap humans, dragging them down into their lairs to either feast upon or rape. When Hotopuku, the great Tarnifa of Rotorua, was slain, his belly was slit open to reveal several remarkably undigested human bodies, along with their still perfectly usable possessions. These included fine cloaks and weapons. Next story is possibly a bit far-fetched, but I found it really entertaining to read and I hope you will too. Many years ago, Paul Bunyan was born in the northeastern American state of Maine. His mother and father were shocked when they first saw the boy. Paul was so large at birth that 5 large birds had to carry him to his parents. When the boy was only a few weeks old, he weighed more than 45 kilograms. As a child, Paul was always hungry. His parents needed 10 cows to supply milk for his meals. Before long, he ate 50 eggs and 10 containers of potatoes every day. Young Paul grew so big that his parents didn't know what to do with him. Once, Paul rolled over so much in his sleep that he caused an earthquake. This angered people in the town where his parents lived, so the government told his mother and father they would have to move him somewhere else. Paul's father built a wooden cradle, a traditional bed for a baby. His parents put the cradle in waters along the coast of Maine. However, every time Paul rolled over, huge waves covered all the coastal towns. So his parents brought their son back on land. They took him into the woods, and this is where he grew up. As a boy, Paul helped his father cut down trees. Paul had the strength of many men. He was also extremely fast. He could turn off a light and then jump into his bed before the room got dark. Maine is very cold for much of the year. One day it started to snow. The snow covered Paul's home and a nearby forest. However, this snow was very unusual. It was blue. The blue snow kept falling until the forest was covered. Paul put on his snowshoes and went out to see the unusual sight. As he walked, he discovered an animal stuck in the snow. It was a baby ox. Paul decided to take the ox home with him. He put the animal near the fireplace. After the ox got warmer, his hair remained blue. Paul decided to keep the blue ox and named him Babe. Babe grew very quickly. One night, Paul left him in a small building with the other animals. The next morning, the barn was gone, and so was Babe. Paul searched everywhere for the animal. He found Babe calmly eating grass in a valley, with the barn still on top of his back. Babe followed Paul and grew larger every day. Every time Paul looked, Babe seemed to be taller. In those days, much of North America was filled with thick green forests. Paul Bunyan could clear large wooded areas with a single stroke of his large, sharp axe. Paul taught Babe to help with his work, and Babe was very useful. For example, Paul had trouble removing trees along a road that was not straight. He decided to tie one end of the road to what remained of a tree in the ground. Paul tied the other end to Babe. Babe dug his feet in the ground and pulled with all his strength until the road became straight. In time, Paul and Babe the Blue Ox left Maine and moved west to look for work in other forests. Along the way, Paul dug out the Great Lakes to provide drinking water for Babe. They settled in a camp near the Onion River in the state of Minnesota. Paul decided to get other lumberjacks to help with the work. His work crew became known as the 7 Axemen. Each man was more than 2 meters tall and weighed more than 160 kilograms. All of the axemen were named Elmer. That way they all came running whenever Paul called them. The man who cooked for the group was named Sourdough Sam. He made everything, except coffee, from sourdough, a substance used in making sourdough bread. Every Sunday, Paul and his crew ate hot cakes. Each hot cake was so large that it took 5 men to eat one. Paul usually had 10 or more hotcakes, depending on how hungry he was. The table where the men ate was so long that a server usually drove to one end of the table and stayed the night. The server drove back in the morning with a fresh load of food. Paul needed someone to help with the camp's finances. He gave the job to a man named Johnny Inkslinger. Johnny kept records of everything, including wages and the cost of feeding Babe. He sometimes used 9 containers of writing fluid a day to keep such detailed records. The camp was also home to Sport, the reversible dog. One of the workers accidentally cut Sport in two. The man hurried to put the dog back together, but made a mistake. He bent the animal's back the wrong way. However, that was not a problem for Sport. He learned to run on his front legs until he was tired. Then, he turned the other way and ran back on his back legs. Big mosquitoes were a problem at the camp. The men attacked the insects with their axes and long sticks. Before long, the men put barriers around their living space. Then, Paul ordered them to get big bees to destroy the mosquitoes. But the bees married the mosquitoes and the problem got worse. They began to produce young insects. One day, the insects' love of sweets caused them to attack a ship that was bringing sugar to the camp. At last, the mosquitoes and bees were defeated. They ate so much sugar they could not move. Paul always gave Babe the blue ox a 35-kilogram piece of sugar when he was good, but sometimes Babe liked to play tricks. At night, Babe would make noises and hit the ground with his feet. The men at the camp would run out of the buildings where they slept, thinking it was an earthquake. When winter came, Babe had trouble finding enough food to eat. Snow covered everything. Ole, the blacksmith, solved the problem. He made huge green sunglasses for Babe. When Babe wore the sunglasses, he thought the snow was grass. Before long, Babe was strong and healthy again. One year, Paul's camp was especially cold. It was so cold that the men let their facial hair grow very long. When the men spoke, their words froze in the air. Everything they said remained frozen all winter long and did not melt until spring. Paul Bunyan and Babe left their mark on many areas. Some people say they were responsible for creating Puget Sound in the western state of Washington. Others say Paul Bunyan and Babe cleared the trees from the states of North Dakota and South Dakota. They prepared this area for farming. Babe the Blue Ox died in South Dakota. One story says he ate too many hotcakes. Paul buried his old friend there. Today the burial place is known as the Black Hills. Whatever happened to Paul Bunyan? There are lots of stories. Some people say he was last seen in Alaska or even the Arctic Circle. Another tradition says he still returns to Minnesota every summer. It says Paul moves in and out of the woods, so few people ever know he's there. On December the 27th of 1981, 4 young boys decided to walk across the marsh in Hackney, north-east Greater London. The night before had been cold and there was still snow on the ground. About halfway across the marsh, the boys stumbled upon a strange set of tracks they couldn't identify. Moments later they saw something that they'd later describe as a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. One of the boys, Darren Willoughby, aged 12, said, "We were near the football pitches at about 5 o'clock in the evening when we saw it. It was very close to us, standing on its hind legs about 7 feet tall." Tommy Murray, 13 years old, told the police that he heard the bear growling, shone his torch on it, and saw its profile standing upright in the dark. Rewind to the 5th of December, when 2 small bear carcasses were found in the Lee River. The carcasses had been decapitated and left to rot in the stagnant water. No one ever found out how they got there. So with their heads already full of bears, it wasn't difficult for the boys to convince the police of their story. The police were impressed with the sincerity of the fear the boys displayed when recounting their stories. Inspector at the time, Pat Curtis, stated when talking to the media, "We do not believe this to be a hoax. We are taking no chances." When 50 policemen, army marksmen, 20 dog handlers and a helicopter descended on the area only a few hours later, no one could find a trace of the animal. On December the 28th, the police searchers found footprints in the snow, 2 sets on either side of the River Lee, and 1 on an island in the river. Despite multiple sources suggesting a potentially dangerous bear, on the evening of the 29th of December, the police called off the search and declared the marshes safe again. In 2012, the Hackney Gazette reported yet another sighting of a beast, but this time the beast was captured on camera. On the 17th of May 2012, student Helen Murray was strolling through woodland near Old River Lee, a channel of the River Lee, when suddenly something large and hairy stopped her in her tracks. Before calling 999, Miss Murray managed to snap 2 pictures of the creature. The 2 photographs showed a shaggy black animal in the undergrowth. A dog owner did come forward claiming his Newfoundland named Willow was the beast, but witness Helen Murray was not convinced. Be it a real-life monster, a misplaced bear, or simply a huge dog, the legend still stands today without a good explanation. So next time you're on the Hackney Marshes, keep a lookout for monsters. I had trouble working out whether this was an urban legend or not, but I'll let you decide. This is from Redditor Benedictus. One of my high school teachers had a job at a small college in Montana when he was a young newlywed. One night on a long commute home, he was driving down a lonely road, past fields of corn or grain, when he saw a hitchhiker. This being decades ago in rural Montana, he pulled over to let the guy in without a second thought. The man was dressed in a really old outdated suit and a big stylish hat. My teacher said he looked like someone from the 1940s. So the guy gets in next to my teacher without saying a word. Teacher asks him where he needs to go, and the guy just points forward, so the teacher drives on. The hitchhiker says nothing at all, just pulls his hat down as though he were sleeping. Then suddenly he tips up his hat, looks out the window and says, "Stop the car now." My teacher pulls over and lets him out. The guy stands on the side of the road for a second, and then sprints into the field beside the road until my teacher can't see him anymore. Granted, the crop was fairly tall. Thinking this strange but not necessarily dangerous, my teacher continues to drive home. When he checks his rearview mirror a few minutes later, he sees the hitchhiker on all fours like an animal, running after the truck at inhuman speed. He floors it, coaxing the old truck up to dangerous speeds, and finally loses the guy. The teacher pulls off at a gas station and calls his wife, and relates the story, and tells her to lock up the house. She thinks he's joking. When he asks why she would think that, she says that one of her co-workers told her the exact same story. She thought maybe they were just teasing her with an urban legend, and that my teacher was in on the joke. Anyway, my teacher assured her that he was not lying, and she evidently believed him. She vouches for her side of the story because she showed up to one of our fundraisers and I asked her about it. So yeah, now I just avoid lonely roads in Montana. Let's face it, clowns are creepy, and this urban legend doesn't help. The story goes that a babysitter of a wealthy family was told to watch TV in a specific room after the children went to sleep. While there, she got creeped out by a clown statue and called the parents to ask if she could move rooms. They instructed her to grab the kids, leave the house and call the police. Why? Well, the kids had been complaining of a clown watching them in the middle of the night, and the parents thought it was just nightmares. It turns out it was a little person dressed as a clown stalking them. One of the darkest of London's urban legends, this is a tale about a pool that supposedly murders people. Many years ago in the darkness of the forest, a young couple in love were murdered beside the pond by the woman's disapproving father, and things have gone rapidly downhill since then. The water reportedly turned inky black, the wildlife around it started to die, and then corpses started turning up on the shore. Locals began whispering that the pool was somehow drawing people towards it and then drowning them in its murky depths. Creepily, no one knows exactly where this pool is, and it doesn't appear on any map, so the rules for Epping Forest are the same as they were in Jaws. Don't go into the water. Black Annis, also known as Black Agnes or Black Anna, is a bogeyman figure in English folklore. She is imagined as a blue-faced hag or witch, with iron claws and a taste for human flesh, especially children. She is said to haunt the countryside of Leicestershire, living in a cave in the Dane Hills with a great oak tree at the entrance. She is said to venture out at night looking for unsuspecting children and lambs to eat, then tanning their skins by hanging them on a tree, before wearing them round her waist. She would reach inside houses to snatch people. Legend has it that she used her iron claws to dig her cave out of the side of the sandstone cliff, making herself a home there, which is known as Black Annis Bower Close. The legend led to parents warning their children that Black Annis would get them if they did not behave. She is also known to hide in the branches of her oak tree, waiting to leap upon unsuspecting prey. Other traditions stated that when she ground her teeth, people could hear her, giving them time to bolt their doors and keep away from the window. It's said that the cottages in Leicestershire were purposely built with small windows, so that Black Annis could only get a single arm inside. When she howled, she could be heard 5 miles away. Then the cottagers would fasten skins across the window and place protective herbs above it to keep themselves safe. Hornseyville is a mythical village of dwarves in Waukesha County, Wisconsin. It is rumoured to be located near Mystic Drive in Muskego. Locals say that within the woods near Muskego lives a conclave of little people, whose homes are built to scale. In the mythical village is said to live an old albino man, who serves as their protector. Legend has it, if trespassers are caught, the unruly dwarves cut their legs from the knees down, so they are forced to live like one of them. According to the legend, after continuous exploitation of a number of circus dwarves, they revolted against their ringleader. After killing their master, they hanged him in a wooded area, after first cutting off his arms and legs. To avoid being arrested, or even worse consequences from the circus community, the dwarves set out to create their own community, built exclusively for dwarves. The story goes that in the woods lives an old man among the dwarves. He is said to wait at the end of Mystic Drive, shotgun in hand, to ward off anyone trying to cause trouble to the dwarves. The story also goes that he first met the group of dwarves as a child. As a young boy, he accidentally stumbled upon Hornseyville, and upon instantly treating them as equals, they sheltered the young boy and raised him as one of their own. As he grew up, he notoriously defended the dwarves, often resorting to violence. Many versions of the story exist. Robert Hunt in 1881 and Sarah Hewitt in 1900 relate that a certain Bishop of Exeter fell ill and came to Dawlish to restore his health. But an ambitious local priest aimed to succeed the see in the event of his superior's demise. The priest's guide was his clerk, and they often made the journey to check on the condition of the bishop. One night in a terrible storm, while crossing Haldon Moor, they lost their way and found themselves miles from the correct path. The priest in his frustration abused his clerk with the words, "I would rather have the devil himself than you for a guide." At that moment a horseman rode by and volunteered to be their guide. After a few miles they came across a brilliantly lit mansion and were invited by their guide to enter and partake of his hospitality. They enjoyed a sumptuous repast, and in the midst of the merriment the news arrived that the bishop was dead. Eager to secure his chance for promotion, the priest prepared to leave, together with the clerk and the guide. However, the horses refused to move. After liberal use of his whip and spurs, the priest cried, "Devil take the brutes," upon which the guide exclaimed, "Thank you, sir," and shouted G up. The horses galloped over the cliff, carrying the parson and the clerk with them. The devil turned them both to stone, facing forever seaward, monuments to greed and disappointed ambition. The well-known Pied Piper story has its origins in 1284 in Hamelin, Germany, when the town was suffering from a plague brought about by an infestation of rats. Famously, the piper, dressed in pied, which is multicoloured, clothing, appeared and led the rats away with a tune played on his flute for an agreed fee. Following this, the people of Hamelin backed down on the agreed fee, and the piper furiously demanded revenge. In the same month he returned, and in the same manner as he had done with the rats, led away all the town's children, apart from 3. A disabled child who couldn't walk, a deaf child who could not hear the music, and a blind child who couldn't see where he was going. The truth to the legend has several rather dark theories, though the most commonly claimed is that the majority of the town's children perished in a plague, which was brought about by rats. In Philadelphia, there's rumoured to be a bus that doesn't have an end destination. The story says that the bus only picks up passengers that are at their lowest moments and who need to get away from their problems. Once the passenger is ready to face the world, they can get off the bus. But the passenger has no idea how long they've been on the bus for. It could have been hours, days, or even years. And that brings us to the end of this week's video. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to be away next week, so there won't be a video, but I shall have one on the 2nd of July, so stay tuned. So in the meantime, thank you again for watching. Thank you for all your support. I really appreciate it. Don't forget my 2 books are on Amazon Kindle only. And I shall leave you now and say, stay happy, stay lucky, stay healthy. Most of all, stay spooky.